Hey guys, in the next few minutes, we'll be learning how to set up message counters and notification for group messaging like this. Okay, so for single messaging or one-to-one messaging, it is usually like this. You would usually have something like a field like this in your message that just says read, okay, and it will have yes or no value, right? This is what you would have for a one-to-one message. But then you would realize that this cannot work for group messaging because both parties are changing the messages from read to unread. Okay. So if the participant of the message contains three people, how do you want to do that? Okay. So that's what this tutorial will be going through today. Okay. So here I just have a simple messaging platform here. Guys, this is not about messaging, but an aspect of messaging, which is how to set up counters for group messaging, okay, and the notification here too. So here I just have one conversation between three people, Jake, Sarah, and Mike, okay, and yeah, like I said, it's just a basic messaging interface, okay. So let's go through how to set up message counters for for each person in a very modular and simple way. Okay, so go back to my editor and I'm going to be creating a new data type and I'm going to call this unread message. Okay, and unread message we just have basically two fields: conversation, and unread message. And this will be a text. Okay, and not just text, to be a list of text. Okay, so that's done. And then so let me just give you a quick summary of how I want to achieve this. Okay, so when a message is sent, okay, the other two people in this group should also have notification here or message counters here showing how many messages they've not read, right? And this will just contain the overall message in all the conversations they belong to, the count of all the messages they've not read, right? And this is actually the field that would be doing all the counting, okay? That will be doing the counting. And let me quickly say this too, that when a conversation is being created, right now, I've created a conversation already here. As you can see, a conversation has already been created between these three people, right? So you could just add this to your workflow that when a conversation is being created, okay, this unread message thing should also be created too, okay? And the conversation will just be that conversation that was created, right? So I'm just going to be doing this manually. So in my app data, I'm just going to be creating unread message manually. Okay, I'm going to create one and fill in the conversation, and then we would also fill in the unread message from the front end, not manually. I'm going to create one unread message, and the conversation it belongs to is the only conversation in my database, which is this one. So I'm just going to be copying the unique ID manually here. I'm just going back to these unread messages and put it there. Okay. Yeah, so a quick summary of how this unread message is going to be populated. Okay. So let's say there are three people in that conversation or on that group in quotes. Okay. So if one person sends a message, okay, this field will be populated with the email of those two people. And when I mean the two people, that is, there are three people on the group, so that will be minus the person sending the message, right? So the counter in the front end, okay, this counter in the front end is going to be counting the number of times the current user email exists on this data type, on this field here. Okay. So it might sound vague now, but it's going to make perfect sense really soon. So let me just start that. Okay. So when a message is sent, this is the group that sends my message. I'm going to say edit workflow. Okay. And this is just what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be attaching that workflow to the last one before the research relevant input. So I'm just going to say make changes to a thing. Okay, so we've assumed that that unread message thing has been created. Okay, that was what we created manually. Okay, so we're just making changes to it now whenever we are sending a message. So the thing to change would be do a search for unread message. Okay, where conversation is equal to, okay, I want to do the parent group conversation. So let's populate it here. Okay, so I'm going to close this now and try to populate this containing group with a conversation thing. So, okay. So since we have one conversation, okay, so I'm just going to be giving this group here, type conversation, okay, and I'm just going to be do a search for conversation, okay, first item, because we just have one conversation in our database. But then if you have more than one, the workflow you want to do or the kind of flow you want to do is when you click on one conversation, it is passed on to this group. Okay, so this group now has a conversation of the message that is going on here, and then like that you can pull it from that group. Okay, but since we just have one, so it's fine if we just do a search for conversation first item. Okay, so back to my workflow, and I'm just going to complete this one. So this, we should have parents group conversation here now. Okay, so and that's the first and only item that we have. I'm just going to be exposing everything here. All right. So conversation is the same thing, right? So we don't need to populate that. Okay. So we can just say parents groups conversation. But then if it's not populated, it's also fine. So since we have just one. So unread message here, this is the most interesting part of it. So what we'll be doing here is to add lists. Okay. Add list. Okay. And before adding the list, this is going to be an arbitrary text. Arbitrary text. Now, if we just leave it like this, it's going to give us like an error. It's not complete. So this arbitrary text is just going to be separated by comma. Okay, what's the name of that? I think it's split. Yeah, split by. Split by, and we're just going to be putting a comma here. So the system sees it as a valid list. Okay, I don't know why we still have this one issue here. Okay, yeah, the arbitrary text. So the arbitrary text has to be filled. So let's go into the arbitrary text now. So the list we want to add here is the email of everybody on that conversation minus the current user. Okay, so how do we do that? That would be to search for unread message where conversation is equal to parents group's conversation. So guys, an alternative way and a better way to do this, instead of doing a search, okay, you can have, although I won't be doing it, but then it's just good to throw that in. So instead of doing a search every time, okay, we can just have a unread message thing attached to conversation. Okay, so this conversation can have another field called unread message. Okay, and just find a way to pass the unread message in into this conversation thing when this conversation is being created. Okay, so but I'm just going to continue with it like this just to keep things simple. So let's continue with our expression here. So I'm going to be doing a search for unread message where conversation is equal to parents groups conversation, and what I'm pulling out, the field I'm pulling out is um, participants. Yeah, so that will be first item. Okay, this is the first and only item. Okay, don't get lost, guys. Do a search for unread message where conversation is equal to parents group conversation. We're pulling out the first and only item. Okay, and then within that field that has been pulled out now, we want to populate the conversation participant email. Email, yeah, that's it. Each participant's email. Okay. For now, we've not pulled out the current user, right? But I'm just going to show you what we have now, and we'll come back to this expression to remove the current user. Okay. So let's close this and let's try to send a message. So go to the front end and reload this page. Get this going in a while. Okay, so just say something like hello. Okay, that's sent and back to my backend. I'm just going to go to the database to see what's happened. So unread message app data. Okay, so right now you see what has happened here. Um, we have, let me just open it so we'll have a better view of what's happening here. So we have Jake at email.com, Sarah at email.com, Mike at email.com. Basically, the email of everybody on that particular conversation, right? So that's working. Okay, but then we want to pull out Mike, which is currently signed in. Okay, so anybody that is currently signed in, the email will be here. So Jake is currently signed in. Let's go back to the editor. Okay, and I'm just going to be removing this since we are not done with the expression. So I'll remove that and go back to building our expression to look better, to do the right thing actually. So back to this. Now just come back here. Step back a little bit here. Okay, so first item conversation participants, I'm going to say minus item. Okay, and the item I'm going to be removing is current user. Okay, minus item current user. Then continue it and say each item email. Okay. Okay, so right now I'm going to be sending another message. Okay, I think I sent it twice, but let's see what happened. Back to my editor. I'm just going to refresh this. Okay, so now we have Sarah and Mike. Okay, so the current user email has been removed, which is Jake. Okay, so that's good. That's exactly what we want to have. But if you notice, this message sent twice. So that means the email you should be duplicated, right? So let me even send another one. Say hi. Okay, sending hi. And if we go back to the editor and look at our database, I'm going to refresh it to be sure I'm seeing an updated data. Okay, you'd see that we still have the same thing. Okay, so that's how add list works. Okay, when that thing already exists, if that thing already exists, it wouldn't add it anymore, right? So this is where we are going to be adding something to differentiate them, because we actually want those email to be populated every time a message is sent. But then we have the email already. So we need something to differentiate each email from, from the previous email. Although the email will still be contained in the list, but then it will have identifiers. Okay. So back to this expression here. So we are going to add one more thing here. And what we are going to be adding is format as text. Format as text. Okay, so now we have format as text, and it's saying content to show per item. Okay, so we'll still be referring to this text, okay, which is the email, but we want to add something else. Okay, apart from the email, we'll just add a dash like this, and I'll just calculate random formula. Okay, and the random formula will generate random string. I'll make it just 5. Okay, and to make sure we don't have the same thing at any point, I'm just going to say use letters, use non-capitalized, use numbers, use special characters. Okay, and to make sure the system recognizes it as a list, I'm going to use a comma as a delimiter. So I'm going to close this now, and yeah, that's it. Okay, so let's quickly go through this expression again because it's a little bit mouthful, right? So what we did first was just to say arbitrary text split by comma for the system to recognize it as a list of things, because we are adding a list actually. So within the arbitrary text, we are doing a search for unread message where conversation is equal to that particular, conversation we are on. Okay, and we are pulling out the first and only item. Okay, and the field we are also pulling out from that type is, the participant's email, but then minus current user. So the current user, anything will not be added. Okay, none of the field of the current user will be added. Okay, so we are pulling out the emails. Okay, And since we want the email to come out differently all the time, or maybe not differently, but has something to, differentiate them from the other emails that has been, there before, formatted as text, and then added this text, which is actually the email and random string, and then separated by comma, okay, because it's a list, right? And yeah, and that's it. So let's see what we have now when we preview this thing. Okay, so now I'm going to be sending a message. Hello. Okay, going to be sending another message. How are you? Okay, so I sent message twice. Right. So I'm going back to my editor and head to my database. Okay, and I'm just going to be reloading this so that I have an updated data. Okay, so let's go into this now and see what we have. Okay, so that was that first ones we created that has nothing, right? But then when we added that expression, okay, you see what's happening here. We have Sarah at email.com again, and then we have unique identifiers. And these unique identifiers are the calculate random string thing we did, okay? And then we have Mike again, okay? We have Sarah again. So basically, we have everybody on the group minus the current user, okay? And each time a message is sent, okay, this email is populated and the unique identifier is added to it. So like this, the system duplicates it because of these unique identifiers there. So if you send a message twice, okay, we would have Sarah at email.com, unique identifier, Mike at email.com, unique identifier. Then the second time, same thing. Okay. So let's cancel this now. Okay. And actually build the counters themselves. Now, since the system is set up already, building the counters will be very, very easy. Okay. Okay, guys, so let's populate this counter itself now. Okay, and see how to pull out the count. Okay, so I'm just going to be clearing this. And after I do that, I'm going to be signing in as Sarah, not Jake, because if I preview it as Jake, we are going to have a count of 0 because Jake's email is not even in this list at all because you've been removing it, right? So just going to say to get the count, that we do a search for unread message. Okay. And the only filter I'm going to be having here is where conversation is equal to parent group's conversation. Okay. I'm going to close that. I'm going to be pulling out the first and only item. And then I'm going to be referring to each item on read message. Okay, I'm going to be putting a filter there, a filtered, and the constraint I'm going to be adding to this filter will be where this text, okay, and this text is referring to the individual email, okay, where it contains, okay, oops, where this text, okay, contains current user email, okay, current user email, and then I'm going to be putting the count because that's what we want, the count. Okay, so I'm going to be signing in as Sarah now and see what we have in preview mode. Okay, so right now I'm signing as sarah@email.com, and indeed we have three. And just to confirm, show you guys why we have three, okay, is because sarah@email.com came out in three instances here, which is here, this is another one, and this is another one here, right? So if Mike signs in too, Mike also has three instances. So this is one, two, three. Okay, so that's that. And before we go into how to clear it, because the right flow or the normal flow is, or when they say that they have an unread message, when they click on the conversation, the unread message should clear, right? But before we come here, let's also populate this one because it's the same expression here. We're just going to be removing this filter here, this one here. Okay, so I'm just going to be copying this. Okay, making sure it's copied. I'll come here for the notification now. Okay, I'm going to be removing this one and paste this one here. Right, I'm going to put in a placeholder so that thing looks tidy. I'm just going to put 0 as a placeholder, and then here I'm going to be removing this parent groups conversation, right? Because we want to count all the instances. If there are several, conversation here, every instances, this user email, okay, appears in those conversation, right? So let's see that it's downloading. We have three here and we also have three here. So if we have another conversation here that has um Sarah's email, there maybe another conversation. It will be added, everything will be added, and that is what we're going to be having here because we've removed that current um that equal to current groups conversation filter, right? So count is going to be there. So back to the behavior that clears this unread message. So what we're going to just be doing is when the current user, okay, clicks on this, we just want to remove their emails from that list. Okay, we want to remove it. Okay, so it's just like the opposite of what we did to populate it. So add workflow, so that will make change. Okay, if I, instead of building it from beginning, I'm just going to start my expression by copying this one. Okay, that's a little bit faster. Okay, just going to be copying this. Okay, copy, and I'm going to be pasting it here. Okay, so right now I'm just going to be removing these two for now and check if the expression is actually correct. Okay, so we search for unread message where conversation equal to parent group conversation, and I want to remove from this unread message, and I'll just say remove list, and the list I'll be removing is this unread message, okay, unread message, okay, that field, okay, and I'm going to have a filter here, okay, and the constraint will be where this text, which is the email now, contains current user email. Okay. So in other words, anywhere Sarah at mail.com exists will be removed. So in other words, the message has been cleared. Okay, so I'm just going to see how that works. So Sarah Signed in and Sarah has three unread messages. So when I click on this should turn to zero, right? And this should be zero too. Okay, so every instance is where Sarah at email.com exists has been removed. And let's see that in the database. So here we have just mike at email.com, mike at email.com, and mike at email.com. So, so this is like the easiest way I've found to do message counters and notification for group messaging. Okay, so if you found this tutorial useful, consider subscribing to this channel to have more tutorials like this. See you in the next one, guys.